What's up, guys? I'm back with another video today, and here I have with me one of the greatest Yu-Gi-Oh players of all time, Mr. Frazier Smith. Say hello.
Hey, what's up, guys? Frazier here, host of the I Am Nerd podcast, former Yu-Gi-Oh competitive player. Haven't played competitive in like 6 years now. I think I quit around 2017, which is so crazy that that's 6 years ago now. But yeah, Zoo it was like Zoo format substitute, not substitute, Fusion sub Zoo. I'm thinking of substitute because I play so much damn Edison and Cam, and I just got finished recording 2 masters for my channel. But yeah, I am a Yu-Gi-Oh player who's been around for a very, very long time. I'm not going to say my age, but I am old. I am an old man now. And some of you might have known me as the Dark Magician. I'm now a Dark Sage. And I was sponsored by ARG for a while, sponsored by Pro Play Games for a while, PPG, and traveled the world playing Yu-Gi-Oh for several years. One of the best times of my life. Made so many friends along the way. Got a ton of tops and all that good stuff. Won a YCS. You know, everything. Yu-Gi-Oh gave me so much happiness, honestly, when I was, going through college and just trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my life. I'm a full-time accountant now. That's what I've been doing for the last 10 years or so. But yeah, Yu-Gi-Oh has been probably the thing that I've done the most with my life. When I really think about it, I spent over half of my life playing Yu-Gi-Oh as one of the things that brings me happiness and even when I tried to get away from it, I still kind of kept up with it. And now I'm just fully playing a retro format, which is being endorsed by Konami, Edison Format. And I'm really happy that the community is growing. And as you guys may have known, on the I'm Nerd podcast YouTube channel, I've started releasing a lot of content for Edison Format. I just started ramping up in February. And the channel's been growing really fast, so I appreciate that. On the way to 1,000. And yeah, the podcast I do with my friend Kenny, who I've known for 13 years, we talk about nerd stuff, literally Marvel, TV shows like Game of Thrones, The Last of Us. We talk about video games like God of War, Smash Bros. We do a lot of Yu-Gi-Oh episodes as well. When a ban list drops, or when we have Yu-Gi-Oh guests, we talk about their legacies and stuff like that, kind of like what we're doing here. And yeah, honestly, podcasting is one of my favorite things. I didn't know that I could talk so much until the pandemic, when we were all just trapped in the house. And I realized, now that I work from home, I don't have to go into an office 5 days a week. I have a lot more free time to just do creative things. And I realized that I am a creative person. So the pandemic, in a way, I've been saying this a lot lately, but in my opinion, the pandemic kind of saved my life, because I really don't even know. I can't even remember what my life was like prior to 2020. It was I work every day, Monday through Friday. I go into an office, and then I do my work. I get paid, and I wasn't playing Yu-Gi-Oh, so I was just kind of gaming here and there. But I honestly haven't been gaming as much, and I stopped traveling for Yu-Gi-Oh. So once the pandemic happened, it kind of gave me perspective to figure out what do you want to do with your life outside of being an accountant? Because that's not all of me, right? That's what I do for a living, but it's not my main focus in life. And so now that I podcast and create content, I realize that this is what I really love to do. And yeah, so I'm here with Cam. So I hope that was enough of an introduction, but I can ramble a little bit. So reel me in if I get too crazy.
For those who want a list of specifics, this man here has a YCS win at YCS Land 2010 with Gravekeepers, 11 YCS Top 32 or better performances, and 4 North American World Championship qualifier tops. And that's just absurd. I've never talked one-on-one with anyone with that kind of a resume except for Dale Bolito. He's the only person that I've ever talked one-on-one with, and I want to do a video of him too. But while I got you here, I just want to pick your brain. For one thing, what made you retire from advanced format Yu-Gi-Oh, and what made you come back to retro, specifically Edison?
Okay, so I retired, like I said, around 2017, right before Lynx came out. I saw that the game was changing a lot, and it was going in a direction that I wasn't really happy with. And we've all played through some really shitty formats. I think that's part of being a Yu-Gi-Oh player at this point, right? We all know. In fact, Edison Format being one of my favorites, right after Edison Format is a really bad format. Like literally, the pack that comes out after Edison introduces Frog FTK, Full Power Infernity, X Sabers with Dark Soul and Boggart Knight, which is really a fast ass deck too. That just kind of invalidates your entire game because it summons Golems and takes away your hand on top of summoning a bunch of monsters, and it does it consistently. So that's another really root deck. And the game just got to a point where, like, for modern Yu-Gi-Oh, so past just the 2010 Frog FTK stuff, I just didn't feel like going through Spiral format, and I think that was what was coming up next. So I never played Spiral format, and that was a tier 0 format. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure Spirals was like.
It had slight competition from Goki, but Goki didn't get insane until Gumbler, and then it was just a Gumbler format.
Yes,
and then
yeah, go ahead.
Then it was Danger Dark World FTK, and then it was Full Power Strikers. And now I like Full Power Striker Mirrors, but that was the last format that I played before I quit playing and went to Goat format.
And somewhere in there was a Pendulum FTK as well. Just by the way,
I don't even remember. I try not to remember that part of Yu-Gi-Oh.
But yes, so I have been judging Yu-Gi-Oh since like 2000 and I forget if I started when I won a YCS or right before. But I remember whenever I started judging Yu-Gi-Oh regionals, it was right around me winning a YCS, and I want to say it was after because I stopped playing in regionals. And I think I started just judging them. And I enjoyed that a lot because it actually taught me so much. But back to the original question, like what made me retire. So the game just got really fast. And the way I lost my last tournament, I'm pretty sure it was in Vegas for a UDS. I played against 3 people that I knew. And all of the games that I lost, like all of the rounds that I lost, were just out of my control. Like not even just John's or anything, like not even just complaining. Literally, it was 2 people sitting down in front of each other. And we basically could reveal our opening hands and decide the winner from there because that's what basically happened. Like I would go do my zoo stuff and then one guy would go Retaliating C on your fusion substitute. And if he didn't have that, then I would have been the winner of the game, right? So it's like, I don't feel any better about going first, doing my full combo, and then you just can't possibly win because of the advantage. Like, the game just got past the point of Tengu Plant format, a format that I loved, Hat format, another format that I loved, Mermail format, and Fire Fist formats, and Dino Rabbit format, even though that one was a bit toxic, but you can still, like, outplay people, and the games can go pretty slow overall. Edison format, a pretty slow format, like, even GK format and, like, 6 Sam, stuff like that, like, those games, there's some bad stuff in there, but more of the games come down to, like, actual setting traps and playing the game out slowly and thinking through your moves and, capitalizing on misplays. And what I saw the game really becoming in 2017 and onward was summon your big ass board, set a trap that makes it where your opponent can't play, or the monsters just have that built into them anyway, right? Like the Spiral deck, when I saw the combos, because the Spiral deck was known about before it came, you know, like people had combos for it already, and they were showing like, oh, you end on like Firewall and the one guy that pops 2 cards and all these other things on the field, and yeah, your opponent basically can't play the game, and they can't target anything either because you have fucking Resort on the field. And I was like, oh, this link summoning thing is not okay. And then I think also around that time, the other deck that was maybe around was the one that plays Diagram and like True Kings, True Draco. So True Draco Zoo was a thing like when I was getting out the game, and I didn't like I think Chris LeBlanc got his 3rd YCS win. And I was already not playing because I never linked summoned in my life. Like I've never linked summoned in person in my entire life.
Yeah,
and I remember
only online.
Yes, and I remember they had that. I think it was like Milas Radiant had a link monster to it.
Yeah,
and the deck played. That was like one of the first link monsters that ever came out. And the deck would like do. Masterpiece was insane, and I read that card and I was like, "There's no way this card is fair." I think Masterpiece. Well, now I've been educated, but Masterpiece is still not fair, even if he was legal today. Like that card is still not okay. But yeah, so they were just creating a lot of really powerful, fast cards that I just did not agree with. And I also started to take my career more seriously as an accountant. And so 2 things were happening at once. The game was getting, from my perspective, the game was getting worse. Or at the very least, even if you don't agree that it was getting worse, it was definitely changing from what it was every year prior to what it is right now. Like in 2023, you look at where Yu-Gi-Oh is right now, it is so foreign to what we're playing in Edison format. And to answer the other half of this question, like what made me start playing retro is last year in 2022, I was in my living room And I think Hydro Pump was in the I Am There podcast Discord server. He said, "Do you mind if I post a link to a stream in Discord?" I said, "Yeah, dude. Like, I don't care. I'm not one of those guys like you cannot promote anything else in this Discord. Like, I'm not like that." So I was like, "Yeah, just post it, sure." And he posted the link, and I was bored. I think I was I have an indoor bike, so I was like biking, and I said, "You know what? Fuck it. This is old Yu-Gi-Oh. I don't know why people are playing this, but I'm gonna watch it." So I clicked on it, and the first thing I saw actually was Dale Bolito playing an RBET. He's playing RBET 1, I guess. It was Dale Bolito playing, and I think it might have been round 1. It was really early in the day, but it was Dale Bolito playing on stream. He's playing with Diva Hero, and I was watching him duel, and I saw how slow the game was. Like, at one point, it was like a Thunder King on the field, and then a Stratos came out, and then a Bottomless, and a Dust Tornado, and a Deep Prison, and a Mirror Force, and a Torrential. And I was like, wow, they're like going back and forth. And I could see Dale making good plays, and like his opponent making plays and stuff. And that just immediately reignited my fire for Yu-Gi-Oh! I saw that you could actually influence the outcome of your game, and that made me really happy. So I watched the entire tournament that day. Like, I watched the entire RBET 1 until Keegan stopped streaming eventually. And the next day I watched day 2. And I was like, man, this is really cool. Like, seeing these people play in old format. Then I started researching it and found out that there's like a whole community of people who've been playing Edison Format for years. And once I got the link to edisonformat.com, I was hooked, because what that did, I think edisonformat.com is insane. I think it's the best thing that could ever happen to a retro format, because it's so detailed. It has everything you possibly could need to jump into the format. And I think that if it did not exist, I would have been a little bit more reluctant, because it has the rules, which I think is the most important thing. And I think that that's one of like the things that keeps people out of other formats where it's not clear like how do things work, because that's always going to be like a gatekeepy kind of thing with the rules. Yu-Gi-Oh rules are so finicky. Right? Like, Yu-Gi-Oh rules are so finicky that Raikou in Edison Format, it targets and then it makes things miss timing, but Raikou currently apparently doesn't target, and it also doesn't make things miss timing. Yeah. So like, and that has changed multiple times, as well as things like Necro Valley.
Oh god, yeah.
It has changed like 20 times. So,
Necro Valley is even different in GOAT than it is in Edison. So like, so EdisonFormat.com is kind of like, not a rip-off per se, but it's like it's heavily influenced by GoFormat.com, which me and MMF worked on in large part for all the rulings. And so you go on EdisonFormat.com, you see all these individual ruling pages that are like pulled straight from UDE for email rulings.
Yep.
GoFormat.com has that too, and it is astounding to me what differences there are. And like, as someone who's very inundated with rulings, and the judge community, like, I'm literally the head judge of GOAT on Dueling Book. If they added an Edison ladder, I'd be the head judge of that on Dueling Book. And like, yeah. So like all these rulings and stuff, like I know this stuff, but like it still amazes me. I'm finding out things, even though I researched for these formats and like found things myself. I'm literally still learning some of the differences today. Like, even though, because the rulings they're so out there, they're so different. I didn't start judging actual Yu-Gi-Oh until 2015. So I know the rulings from that point forward very, very well. And then, but the ones before that, like finding those things out, like doing it alone is an impossible task. Like,
yeah. And the longer you go, right? So that task will become harder and harder. If people go to 2011, because there's just a year of extra cards, you go to 2014, there's years and years of, the card pool keeps growing and growing, and Konami doesn't do set rotations. So whoever is on the projects for these things, like, shout outs to you, MMF, everyone who's ever worked on creating a foundation for these older formats. Like, you're part of the reason why I think that people can even play them, because not knowing the rulings from back then is a huge deal. And not to harp on it too much, but like, that is part of the reason why I felt comfortable jumping into Edison Format. Like, I don't remember all of the rules back then. I did play, but I don't remember 13-year-old rulings, and that is something that I don't think enough people realize. We kind of take it for granted because EdisonFormat.com exists.
Exactly.
And it's a grassroots kind of the grassroots community, right? Like, it's very self-sufficient. We just got Konami involved very recently, where they're hosting side events and stuff now and all that, and they're allowing it to be played at locals in a sanctioned way, which is also really big. But I was already on it before Konami even decided to jump on. Like I was on it when I just saw the Discord community and EdisonFormat.com, and just how detailed. Like you click on, if you want to build a volcanic deck, there's actually a section that just has decks A through Z, and you can click on volcanics, and it will give you deck lists of people actually playing volcanic decks, or quick draw, or monarchs, and X Sabers, Six Samurais, and then like all the competitive stuff, Blackwings, Vayu, zombies, frogs. Like there's so much information. And so when I saw that, I was just clicking through the page, and I was so happy about it. Then I looked at the ban list, and I saw all the rulings there, and I saw rulings that are unique to just Edison format and to tournament results and the top 8 decks. It reminded me of like metagame.com, but basically a more improved version because it's more modern, obviously. Like metagame.com, thank God that it exists, because that was a big part of my childhood. But now in 2022, when I got into Edison format, just technology overall has increased tremendously, has gotten better tremendously over those years. And so edisonformat.com is just, not only does it have competitive decks and stuff, but it just has so much content. So yeah, big fan of like Format Library, EdisonFormat.com, E3 Yu-Gi-Oh channel, like all of the channels that promote Edison content and make it accessible to people who are trying to get into it, because it's gotten really, really big. I'm surprised at how big it's gotten, but I'm really happy about that too. So yeah, getting Edison was one of the things that has brought me happiness again, on top of being a podcaster, a content creator.
All right. So in Edison format, what decks have you been playing lately? And what decks would you say are like the best ones you've played?
Okay, so I've played basically everything. I haven't touched some of the jank strategy, so I have not played a single Gear Town deck yet, for example, because I'm just not a fan of that type of stuff. But I've played Quick Draw, I've played Diva Hero, I've played Blackwings, I've played Vayu, I've played all variations of Frogs, except the new one that Rodneck just topped with the turbo rocket thing. Like I haven't tried that yet, because that was just insane. I've tried Fairies, I've tried Christia Sworn, I've tried Light Sworn, I've played Flamvel, I've played Cat, Summon Cat good. I've tried Doom Cow Cat at one point. I've tried Karpav's Chaos Fairy deck. I've done all kinds of variations of zombies, Nazar Sarhan zombies, Diva zombies with Miracle Fusions. Gladiator Beast for sure. I've played the Amaryllis deck. I was on Norlaris for a very long time, probably longer than I should have been, because that deck doesn't actually let you take advantage of your skill level, but I was still loving it. Dragon Turbo at one point I was really big into. I liked that deck for a hot minute, and then I started to literally resent it. So I've played, as far as like tier lists go, I've played everything in S and A tier of like any real tier. Like if your tier list is legitimate, I've played any deck that is S and A tier of all of them, and then I've played like some stuff that I would consider maybe like B tier. Like I don't think Synchro Cat is actually a real deck, if I'm being honest. Like, I just don't think.
I completely agree, it's not. But
yes, and I've also played gadgets, because I actually, so fun fact, I played an SJC Edison in 2010. Mm-hmm. I actually got 34th place.
Oh,
and so very close to topping. I was 2 spots away from topping. My first ever. That would have been my first ever YCS top. But I played Machina gadgets. I think I played 45 cards. I played like I think they call it like 9th gadget or some shit like that. Like 45 cards, 9 of them are gadgets. And so the theory was like 1 out of every 5 cards was a gadget. Yeah. So you don't draw too many. Anyway, I played a 45 card gadget deck. I went X and 2, I assume, because that's the only way I imagine I got that close to topping. And I actually got my first feature match there. I played against Monarchs, which is a terrible matchup, and I actually ended up losing. But I ended up finishing 34th. And so when I came back to Edison format, I was like, I wonder if this deck could be updated in a modern way and competitive. And obviously, like gadgets, unfortunately, they just kind of suck. Like people have gotten so much better. Deck building has gotten better. Decks that didn't exist now. Like all of the fairy decks were just not a thing in 2010.
Well,
Diva Hero, I don't think was a thing either. At least it wasn't in the topping decks.
Yeah,
like
Diva Hero wasn't a thing. The fairy deck, Dan Kitsko played that at SJC Edison, but it was like an older build. Dan Kitsko, he's around 1 feature match of if you go and look at articles. Yeah,
see, there you go.
But Diva Hero was not. Diva Hero was playing the OCG. They had in 2009, I think they had Triple Mally at the time.
Yeah.
And
oh my god.
Yeah, so with Diva and Amalia McGrave, you make 2 level 8 synchros that way, and then they played Miracle. Like, OCG was really ahead of us. Like, if you look back to the OCG archives from, like, around Edison Format, or, like, from what our card pool would have been for Edison back in the OCG, they were playing, like, Blackwings with Greffer and Triple Value, and, like, multiple deck devs. They were playing Diva Hero. They were playing, like, a lot of the things we take for granted as decks in Edison now. But some of them didn't make it over here for some reason, and some of it was ban list reasons. But
like Sky Scores Nolaris as a deck, Dragon Turbo as a deck. I don't know if those existed back then either. But like when people think about Edison, they think about Quick Draw, they think about Doom Cowcat, maybe Blackwings, Glad Beast, and even Flamvell. I think topped the actual event.
Flamvell. Didn't it get 2 top spots?
I think so. I think so.
Imagine that now.
I know, isn't that crazy? Because Flamvell, I think a part of Edison Format though, because all of the community, I think we all kind of shit on some of the decks, right? But the big thing to take away from any given tournament is that representation is a big reason why a lot of decks don't do well. Like if you had a good player playing Flamvell, I think that Flamvell could 100% top it, an RBET or Deck Devastators or whatever. I don't think that the deck is like so bad that it actually is unplayable and will never top an event. I just think that nobody is willing to really use their tournament to play Flamvell is really the issue.
Yeah, the only the only people I know that still play are Fitz and Soulsmanic. Soulsmanic literally only plays it, and Fitz plays like some zombie combination with it.
Zombies I think is actually, so Marcus Hayden, one of my good friends, another YCS champion too, he doesn't play Edison as much because I think he returned to Modern, but when he was playing, he was big on the Flamvell zombie deck because it summons Darken like super easy and it gets so much value out of getting that guy out. And then Rekindling is just an insane card with Goblin Zombie, like Rekindling, Bring Back Magician, and you got Book of Life too and all that stuff. So it's like very combo heavy. And then zombies are just a naturally absurd engine. The fact that Goblin Zombie's not once per turn.
Yeah.
But I like to my point, a lot of decks at Edison don't do well because a lot of people aren't playing them, or enough people aren't playing them, or the better players aren't playing them. Whereas you see things like Blackwings, and I think going forward we're going to see a lot more Christia Sworn. I've been really preaching about that deck a lot. I think that deck is insane. It's definitely high S tier for me. Like there was an S plus, I think it's S plus. Frogs, stuff like that. Like those decks are. If I was able to see the data, I believe that Frogs and Blackwings and Lightsworn-esque decks, those are probably the most represented decks in any, like zombies, those are the most represented decks in any given tournament. Like those are the decks that you're going to play against the most. And therefore, with that much representation, it's no surprise when they get to the top and they win, or like, you know. Also, hero decks are really on the rise right now. I think 3 different kinds of hero decks topped RBET 1 Season 2, and that's really cool to see as well. But a lot of these,
a hero beat, and
an evil hero.
The Dark Calling version.
Yep. And that's really dope. Like the fact that the top 8 was pretty diverse overall. It's funny that I think I brought this up in my top 8 decklist discussion, but the top 8 was diverse, and then you get the top 4, and it's just all of the S tier decks blatantly. Like it's just
I said that the top 4 was a perfect representation of the 5 best decks in the format.
Yep. Like literally zombies, frogs, Value Turbo, and Christia Sworn.
The only one that was missing was normal Blackwing for me. Yeah,
literally normal Blackwing. And the week before, Blackwings literally dominated an in real life PS5 tournament.
Yeah, I saw
that had like 100 players and some of the best players to ever play Yu-Gi-Oh! Not just Edison Format, like Silverman and McCabe. Like there were a ton of people there who were actually like genuinely really, really good at the game in attendance. So yeah, Blackwings took up 4 out of 8 spots of the top cut there. And like 1 week you have Blackwings dominating, the next week you have zombies winning. And I always say, like, when it comes to the S tier decks, I think that any of them in any given moment could just dominate a tournament. It doesn't, like, just because I say that Blackwings is theoretically the best deck, the reason I don't think it's so much the best deck that it's like no other deck can compete with it, or it doesn't have any bad matchups, or it can't lose, because that's just silly. There are too many decks in Edison Format. Also, bracket luck matters a lot. Like what you play against matters a lot. Especially in early rounds, because you're playing, like, that's the highest chance to play decks that are not real, I would say, like anti-meta. I just played an RBET 1, and I played Christia Sworn, and I played Anti-Meta for 2 rounds in a row, and I actually won one of them, but literally one of the rounds, my opponent went Summon Banisher of the Radiance, activate D-Fisher, game 1. Like, that is terrible bracket luck. So it's like, stuff like that can happen, and that really sucks, but yeah, Edison Format has like 30 decks in it, and the S-tier decks are just the decks that are most likely to go all the way or go to like high top finishes, top 4, top 2, stuff like that, consistently. Any deck can do it, you know, like once, but then consistently, like what do you see consistently? It's going to be fairies. It's going to be any kind of Blackwing deck. It's going to be Vayu and zombies and frogs. And consistently, those are the decks that always just go really deep and guarantees a top at some point. The next RBET could just be completely dominated by Blackwings for all we know. I do think that Blackwings have a bit of fatigue, but
yeah, I feel like once a deck in Edison tops too many times in a row, it's not going to top again for another tournament or two. Like
that's what happens too, because zombies were out of. Look at zombies. That shit was out of favor for a long time.
Yeah, I think zombies very possibly a contender for a best deck. But I told people before Ribbit 2, or Ribbit 1 this season 2, I said Machina is not going to top 8. I said this deck top 2 tournaments in a row, it's not going to top 8. Like, and because I was like, there's just too much hate for it. Like people are realizing it's a powerful deck, and now all of a sudden, because of the sadness that is being the machine type in Yu-Gi-Oh, it's just not possible to top right now. I mean, it's possible. But I mean, you know, it's
always possible. But here's the other thing, and this goes back to my representation point. I think that when people look at top 8 deck lists from a prior tournament or whatever, they often say to themselves, okay, this deck is doing really well. I'm not going to play this deck. I'm going to play something that beats this deck.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And I have played Blackwings for a couple tournaments, and I decided for RBET 1 that I wasn't going to play Blackwings. And I'm like the biggest Blackwing advocate online. Like, I am the guy that's like telling everybody that Blackwings is the best deck. I stand by that. I think that it actually just is. And it's not because of results. I think that being results oriented and saying that it did not top this RBET, so therefore it's not as good, is just like really dumb. Like, you're an idiot. But like being results oriented and saying like, oh, Blackwings has the most tops, therefore it's the best deck. Like, that's also not. I don't say that either. Like, I don't go either way with it. It is the reason why I think that Blackwings is so ridiculous is because the cards in the deck are actually just more powerful than all the other cards in the format, and specifically things like Black Whirlwind, Triple Collude, Triple Blizzard, Icarus Attack, Deck Devastation Virus, Dark Arm Dragon. All of these cards in that specific deck are insane. A 2000 attack monster that's a normal summon, like, that's not okay. And there's just a lot of things that the deck has, whereas Zombies has to do 2 cards to make a play. Blackwings can just summon Shura, and that is a play by itself. Like, that by itself is a play. And it's a good play, too, when people are playing things like Zombies, because you're just like, attack Pyramid Turtle. It's like, okay, like, you get a guy, I get a +1 here. And then now, if I have traps, like, you can't possibly OTK me through this. You need 2 cards to play, which plays into Icarus Attack. And almost every... You know what I mean? Like, stuff like that. Oppression, the fact that it can play Oppression, it's virtually immune to it. Like, it's just a really, really powerful deck. Not because it tops so much, but just because the cards in it are very, very strong, and they don't require setup. Like, every other deck in Edison Format does require a bit of setup. Like, Christia does, Frogs do. Blackwings, from turn 1, you're on like a crazy-ass clock. Like, from turn 1, the deck is just coming at you crazy. And that's kind of like my reasoning for why I feel so strongly about the deck. But, again, I don't want people to take that the wrong way. I don't think that it's the best deck to a degree where we call it Blackwing Format. Right. Like, I just don't think that... I don't think Edison Format will ever be renamed by a deck because there are too many good ones. There's just too many good decks. I think that there will always be contenders. The meta will always get shaken up. The card pool is large. People are still experimenting. I think that Rodnak showed that even though he always plays Frogs, he showed that like you can experiment with certain things and be successful. And we keep seeing innovations. Like the Christia Sworn deck did not exist until November. Like RBT Rulers, before RBT Rulers, anybody playing a Christia Sworn deck did not have a good list. It just like no
I
offense,
played that in the RBCT in like the middle of last year. Me and Pro Storm made a list, but we still had the wolves and stuff. We didn't have 31 monsters. So
correct.
We had a lot of issues in our build. I went 2-2 with it, and I wasn't unimpressed. But I drew wolf 4 times in one game because one of them got Phoenix Wing.
Oh my god.
And I was like, I just wasn't happy about that. But then cutting the wolf's genius.
Very smart. Whoever made that deck did a damn good job creating it, because the list is so good that the recent top, James Ark, he did not change anything about it except one Book of Moon in a side deck.
He made it. He and Smoker, who is Mumix. I don't know if anyone knows Smoker's no Smoker, but he's a very good goat player. And
okay.
Yeah, he and Smoker are members of the modern team Overdose. So the one that Dale Bolito and Lazaro used to be on, and still are actually, but they're now members of that team with them, and they made that list for Rivet Rulers, and so James is now playing it for this Rivet and probably more in the future.
Yeah, so that deck is absurd. It's very, very, very good. And I think that stuff like that, like seeing that, I think November really saved Edison Format for me, because I was a little depressed with Edison for a minute. Like going through the summer of Edison was a lot of Blackwing variants. I consider Value a Blackwing deck, by the way. Like not literally Blackwing, but it is just a fucking Blackwing deck at the end of the day. Like your whole goal is to burst out 2,300 Blackwings and attack your opponent for a game in the fastest way possible.
Yeah.
And that's actually how the guy got second with it. Spooner, is it his name?
Spooner Boy. Yeah.
The deck and Value Turbo is great. Like James Ark usually plays that deck, right? Isn't that one of his favorites?
He is credited with inventing that deck. Even he played it at SJC Edison.
Okay, so that deck is crazy. It is always going to be S tier. I know that it doesn't. Again, back to representation. It wasn't being played for a little while, and I think that people didn't see it top for a minute, so they thought that like Value Turbo isn't that good anymore. And then here you go, this tournament, it just fucking destroyed everyone except the one guy who went undefeated, and it was his weekend. But like literally everyone got destroyed by the strategy that's like, I'm summoning 2,300 vanillas and I'm just attacking you. And that is good enough, because Blackwings is the only deck that can get away with something like that. Like that is crazy to me. Blackwings can just attack you in the most reckless way possible. And it's actually enough in Edison Format, and always will be. Like that will always be a good thing about those decks, the Blackwing variants, is that they can just swarm the field out of nowhere, summon Greffer, pitch, summon a 2,300 guy, burial, summon another 2,300 guy, 4,000, 23, 63 right there. Like you might be dead if you took anything. Like crazy amounts of damage.
I haven't been high on regular Blackwing lately. I took it I took it Saturday to Rivet 1, and I went 1-2. I lost.
That's what you played on Saturday?
Yeah, I lost to a really bad misplay in my first round. Like I thought it was a good play at the time. He went and he summoned like Colossal Android 0 and left me at 100, and I had Dark Arm and Blizzard in hand, so I could break it, but I had a read that his set was Mirror Force. And so I was like, so I called him on it, and I was like, okay, so I summoned Armed Wing and I attacked the Android, and I was like, you Mirror Force this, I drop Dark Arm. You don't Mirror Force it, I Collude, I drop Dark Arm. And it was Mirror Force, but he just let me collude him. And but I attacked into a Gores. The card he stacked for Plague was Gores, and I was very upset. But if I just summoned Brio and discarded Collude to hit the 0, booked it on Resolution so it would bounce back face down, and drop Dark Arm that way, I would have won the game. And I was really upset that I just didn't go for that line. I wanted to style on him, and it didn't work out. But
it'd be like that. Edison it can be very complicated. Some of the game states get very intricate out of nowhere.
Yeah. He was playing my list too of like 2 changes. He was playing my Diva Hero list. Murray, he won a box tournament with my list, and he made like 2 changes to it, brought it to a Rivet, beat me with it. This is the 3rd time I've lost to my own deck in tournament play. I'm sure you've experienced that before.
I was gonna say that just happens, honestly. Like I've lost to so many decks that literally either I created or innovated or topped with, and people are like, oh, I'm playing your exact deck, by the way. And I'm like, oh, cool. Usually it happens at a local and not at something like a YCS, but it still does suck when it happens. You just kind of have to hold that like, well, yeah, I mean, the deck is good.
Yeah, exactly. Like I'm never really too upset with it, because like, okay, well, I guess I made a good deck. You know, it's like,
yeah. Yep, you got to look at the bright side.
Yeah. Speaking of good decks, let's but yeah, the reason I'm not so high on Blackwing right now is I've been thinking about Value Turbo, which is of course just Blackwings with Hamster instead of Shura.
Yeah, it's a more defensive, but also equally as aggressive deck.
Yeah, so the reason I've been playing Value Turbo so much like instead of normal Blackwing is because I'm just sick of like the openings where you have Whirlwind but like only Blizzard, or like you never see Whirlwind and you have to because your normal summons are terrible compared to like Monarch or something. So like I've been playing Value Turbo because like the theory on it is just so good. Like you have this Hamster Raikou Caius deck and like your mills, like you don't even have to mill the cards. They get to the grave eventually anyway. Even if you draw the values, you have Greffer. You just have the natural like going to the grave. The reason I tell people it's good is because it abuses the natural resting place of monsters. Like for the same reason Burning Abyss was so good is because monsters are guaranteed to go to the grave and then they get their effects. You don't need anything else. Like it's just such a good design for a deck. It is. And so I've really been thinking about that. And then you have better access to deck dev. You don't have to like have Colute to summon deck or to flip deck dev. You don't need a 2-card combo to do it. What?
I said, and it gets to play Oppression.
Yeah, you get to play Oppression. You get to play Light Imprisoning Mirror. And I was telling people,
so many floodgates.
Yeah, I was telling people you could side Goes and Match if it ever came down to it. like it's just, and
it's very good.
Yeah, and I feel the same way kind of about Christia Sworn. I want to pick that deck up, which is the Christia Sworn build's much harder to play than normal Light Sworn. I found
it is. But your decision-making tree is very tight, and if you fuck up, I feel like at any point you could just lose the game from one minor misplay, whereas Blackwings is forgiving as hell. Like, Blackwings is... I've been saying this too lately, and I'm going to start... Maybe I'll do a whole video on it, but I think that at this point in Edison Format, the decks are better than the players. Like, I truly believe that to be true.
Oh my god, I so agree. Well, but... I advocate 100%. I talk about this so much that where I'm like, these players, they're just not making the right plays. They're getting hard carried by the fact that they copy a James Arc list, they copy a Raw list.
Any of the topping decks, they copy it and they just do well with it, and it's like, congratulations, but you played pretty poorly, and just got rewarded with like a Brain Control or a Whirlwind Shore Game 3. Like stuff like that, like a deck dev that hit. Ronek lost literally all of his cards to a deck devastation virus in a game that he was winning by far. And it had to be not just deck dev, because he actually had deck dev covered. It had to be deck dev plus Solemn Judgment. And it's like, that is stronger than the actual person doing that. Like, that is better. Well, like, you're not.
Samu Pastino is the one who did it to him. He's a very good player. I will give him that. But
I don't think he played that particular match very well. If we go back to it, I remember looking at that particular match. I was like, Jesus, he's getting destroyed. Like, it was not. It was literally that was the bailout, and that's kind of my point is that, and I see that more often. Not to target him specifically, but like I see a lot of players have these situations come up where they just play terrible, but your deck is so fucking broken that it doesn't even matter. Like, Christia Sworn is so much better than almost everyone playing it. Like, literally, everyone who's played Christia Sworn, everyone who's played Blackwings at any point, like, your deck is just better than you. Like, Whirlwind is better than anything that you could conceive doing with your brain.
Yeah.
Period.
And you know what really bothers me? What bothers me so much about Christia Sworn? Not anything about the deck, but rather the people who pick it up to play it. They draw a hand of 6 cards and they say, "Look how unplayable this is." And like you watch a replay or something, and they just play really bad the whole time. But even if they draw six cards in their hand, and it's just their opening 6, like, look how unplayable this is. This deck bricks so much, and it's like, I was talking to James about it, and he was like, the deck doesn't really brick that much more than any other deck, and I'm like, yeah, it doesn't. Like, when people talk about like unplayable hands, it's like, I don't think Lightsworn draws unplayable more often than any other deck. I think it just doesn't lie to you when it does.
Yes.
Like, you draw 6 cards with Lightsworn, and you can tell, I got 3 Wolf in my hand, guess I lose. But you draw like 6 cards of Blackwing, and it's Blizzard and 5 traps.
Blizzard value, Whirlwind, and like 3 trap cards, which is a hand that I've actually drawn multiple times now. And you're sitting there staring at it like, this hand is dog shit.
Yeah, exactly.
You can kind of play out of it maybe, but it is dog shit.
Yeah, but any other competent deck that didn't do the same thing you just did is going to blow past you.
Yeah.
So like, that's what I mean when I tell people like, Lightsworn's not inconsistent. It just doesn't lie to you. Like,
Yeah, every deck draws bad, first of all, so let's be clear with that. Like, every single deck in the format can draw bad at some point. I've seen it with zombies. In fact, you can watch some of my older videos, like people listening to this. I have plenty of videos of Mastering the Pupil where, because Stango is a zombie player, so my pupil, his main deck, and he's a Smash player, he's like one of the best Smash players in the world. His main deck, so he's like a main, right? Because like I don't have a main, even though I love Blackwing. Like I switch my deck so often, but like his main deck is zombies, so we play zombies often, and we have some really frustrating hands where it's like double diva, we only play 2, so then we go up to 3 divas, and you still draw double diva, and it's like, well, fuck. And then you have like a hand with no pyramid turtles, no gamma zombies, and you're just sitting there with zombie master in your hand, and 4 or 5 support cards for zombie master, but like nothing to go with a zombie master. So you're just sitting there like, this card is so fucking terrible with this specific setup when I don't have anything going for myself. So like every deck can draw badly. Even my friend, a true hero like Cairo, he plays Diva Hero. And when we play, I tell him all the time, like, the problem with that deck is that you have to draw 3 different things. And when that doesn't happen, the deck is really shit. And then we play, and that happens. Or sometimes he draws insane. It looks like the best deck. It looks like the best deck of all time when it draws correctly. And then when it doesn't do a single thing. And you're like, that deck looks awful. Like, Summon Gilman, or like, you're just sitting behind small dudes and hopefully setting back rows is not going to cut it. Like, I'm like, Icarus attack your shit. Summon Blizzard, start cracking you really hard. And you're just like, yeah, I didn't draw a hero, so I couldn't play Miracle Fusion. I didn't draw water, so I couldn't play Miracle Fusion. Or I drew both, and I didn't draw Miracle Fusion, so I can't play Miracle Fusion. It's like, every deck draws bad, and some of them draw bad more often than others, and that's why there's a tier list. That is why a tier list exists, because Blackwings and Zombies and Frogs and Christia Sworn and the hero decks, they draw bad less, and on top of that, their like good hands are fucking unfair.
Just absolutely ridiculous stuff. Like you can tell when you look at a Frog hand or a Christia Sworn hand, you can tell from your 6 cards, I don't lose this game unless they are just, Yugimoto themselves, right?
Yeah, they have to counter every single card you have, and which that has happened before, where you draw the best hand and your opponent literally one by one they like counter it, but those games are so few and far in between that we don't. They're just outliers. I just call them outliers.
Yeah, and another thing about Christia Sworn is that like people look at it and like it doesn't even have worse brick hands or mills than like regular Lightsworn, because like. So when you play Lightsworn and you draw like wolves in your hand, those wolves are never real cards. They will never be good. Those wolves are never going to do anything until you draw recharge, and even then it's not. Even then it's not good. You're activating the same recharge but with a worse card in your hand and in your deck. And but when you draw Christia and you draw Herald of the Orange Light and stuff, yeah, it's like those cards eventually are going to exist in your hand as real cards and win you the game. And like. And the mills are like, oh, well, there's no wolf to mill. Like, what are you milling? You're milling fairies. Like when you mill these cards, they're still valuable cards because they're part of the count. Like,
yeah, I only think so far only the bad players have complained about no wolves. I actually made a comment about that. I think in my top 8 decklist discussion about how I don't think there's a single reason to play Lightsworn unless you really don't believe in your skill and you want to mill wolf and you love the casino feeling of milling a wolf on the end phase. Because I know that carries people. Like if you're bad. If you're not that good of a player, you play regular Lightsworn and you mill wolves and you feel so happy that for no reason at all other than you have a pulse, you are winning the game against your opponent. Like for no reason other than like I just sat down and I breathed and I started winning the game because I was breathing. Like that is literally how Lightsworn works with wolf milling and Necrogarden milling and all that nonsense. Like I get that that's really good, but I think that there's something way more beneficial in the format to just milling fairies and having the protection of Herald of Orange Light, having the Solar Purity and Lights just be strictly better in your hand than Wolf is. Like, sure, it's 100 weaker, but it is a card that you can actually get out of your hand, and it manipulates your graveyard, and it's like...
also defensive. That makes their guys 300 weaker.
Yep, it does a lot. And yeah, the decks, they're just worlds apart. Like, I will cape for it the hardest. I don't think there's a reason to play Standard Lightsworn ever again in Edison format. Like, you can if you really die hard want to, but... If we're talking about what deck is better, I don't even think that it's close anymore. I think that Christia is one of the best boss monsters in the format.
Absolutely.
Second only to Dark Arm Dragon, because Dark Arm comes down and wins the game that turn. Christia comes down and kind of like
tries to win the game that turn. They have Gores and they can't use it sometimes.
Yeah, but think about how often games end second Dark Arm. Like Dark Arm has the propensity to end the game on the spot. Like your opponent doesn't even get a draw phase. Like it's kind of fucking from also. I'm talking about like from high life points too. Like Dark Arm kills you. He kills you from like you'll be like 68 And your opponent will be like, Dark Arm, I have a normal summoned, summon this guy, pitch Sirocco, send value, banish these two, summon. Oh, yeah, so that's that's 68 exactly, attack per game.
Yeah.
Like, oh, okay, I didn't know that taking 1200 was going to be the death of me.
But yeah, and it's like another thing when it comes to like Lightsworn at the current moment, when you're not playing with Christie Stormville, it kind of reminds me of this joke someone had during Cliff Format. They're like, what's the Konami punishment if you shoot your opponent? And someone was like, well, I mean, if they're a Clifford player, you just prop them up and keep going. And that's how
That's fucked. That is so fucked. Oh no!
But that's how Lightsworn. I mean, that's what reminds me. I don't think Lightsworn is brain dead. Like, I mean, I think you can.
No, I don't think it's.
I think it's like, what's the word? It's deceptively difficult to play in a way where like it looks like it's stupid easy brain dead, but I mean, like you can mess up.
Yes, and that's why I didn't say specifically that Lightsworn itself was brain dead. I said that only the bad players are the ones that complain about not getting to mill Wolf and Christia Sworn. Right, They're like, I can't mill Wolf. I don't feel comfortable because you take away their security blanket, being that they've won games because they milled too many Wolves in Garden and stuff like that, and their opponent who they knew was better than them, like they beat that person and they felt that like that rush of milling the Wolves and like your opponent losing and you just got like a free win, they chase that high forever. But the good players, those are just like outlier games where you win because you just milled Wolves. Like that is just not
you can't lose. Congratulations.
Like, yes, like anyone who sat down and did exactly what you did would have won that game. You didn't actually do anything. There was no decision-making tree that you really had to go through. You just kind of like charge, recharge, here it is. And Christian Sworn can do that too, but Christian Sworn has a harder beginning of the game because it can't mill Wolf. It cannot get free advantage from milling. That just can't happen. Like it can't just go, oh, I activated charge, and here's some free. Like I have 7 cards turn 1 now because I went first and I just milled the Wolf.
If you the difference is though, like so regular Lightsworn, they go charge, recharge. If they don't mill Wolf off one of those things, you're like, okay, do whatever. But then, but if Christia Sworn opens charge, recharge, you're like, oh, I'm dead.
Yep. I've had games where I summon Christia turn 1, and obviously outlier games, but when that does happen, I feel like it's the dirtiest thing in the format.
Oh, for sure. You're playing current format Yu-Gi-Oh! At that point.
Yes, because you know the game is over. Like, there's no world where you could lose that game if you have a pulse. Yeah. And it's certain matchups, I summon it turn 2 pretty consistently, too. I think the deck summons it turn 2. If you open up Christia in your opening hand, like, she can come out turn 2 very often because of Hamster and the Raikou thing, where you can just tribute summon forward, or if you started out with like a recharge and in your after you drew 2, mill 2, you just go set Hamster, set Raikou, pass, and then that gets flipped up next turn. It could easily be 4 fairies right there, especially if your opponent helped you by going like Summon Stratos, and you're like, I'll herald that.
Yeah, there's also going Hamster, Raikou, and then Celestia.
Yes, which is my absolute favorite play. I was playing. I took out the Shire for a while, and I was playing triple Celestia. I put the Shire back in because I like the fact that Charge of the Light Brigade gives you a searchable fairy.
Yeah.
I think that's actually really important. But
sometimes.
Yes, but I think Celestia. If you resolve Celestia, I think the deck just kind of like wins. Like if you resolve that card, because there's just too much milling happening now, and that's what the deck needs to win the game. Anyway, is that once it gets a graveyard set up, it's like unlosable now. Like I can't lose the game when I have this much of a graveyard.
Yeah,
I feel
like that deck's just super unfair and insane.
It is, and it actually is one of the reasons why I think Frogs are going to basically stay in check, because Frogs have a lot of problems, despite the fact that it's definitely an S tier deck and one of the best decks in the format. One of the biggest problems is that Frogs have so many good cards against it. Like the cards against Frogs are so good against it. Like specifically, Christia, Vanny's Fiend, Fossil Dyna, sometimes Deck Devastation Virus, sometimes Play the Rug, sometimes Soul Release, sometimes Master Restrict. There are so many cards where when you're playing with that deck, you're just hoping to God that that's not what they have set. Like, oh, if he has this here, I actually just lose the game outright, no question.
Yeah, and that's why whenever people always go like, Frogs are the best deck, how do Frogs lose? Well, I can tell you how they lose and why they're not the best deck. Like,
there's so many cards.
Like, I don't think there's a best deck anyway. I think that like when you say best deck, you don't really mean best deck in the format unless it's like Dragon Rulers, like in
exactly.
the
Like the format will never be called. For example, it will never be called Blackwing format, right? Like that will just never happen.
It's just the best deck for the tournament, and Frogs can be that, but Frogs can also be a terrible pick.
Yep, because if you played against anti-meta Summon Banisher Summon Banisher activate Defisher turn 1, then like your Frog deck is no longer quote unquote the best deck because your bracket was just fucked.
Yeah,
from the start.
I went to a real life tournament where my first real life Edison tournament where I played my Frog Hero list. I think almost card for card. I think I had like Junk Synchron to it from Ribbit 2, and this story is very annoying to me because the dude didn't have a mat, and he had old sleeves, and he was playing anti-meta with like main Banisher, Ryo, Thunder King. And I was like, before a match, I was like, hey, dude, do you want to borrow my mat? I had 2 mats on me. I was like, you want to borrow my mat? He was like, no, thanks, I'm good. So he 2-0s me with his anti-meta deck. And then at the end of the tournament, he pulls out a trade binder with over $50,000 worth of cards in it. And I'm like, this guy just trolled me.
Like he has the means. He's just choosing like, I'm not buying a mat. I'm old school with it. My sleeves are old. Everything about me is old. But guess what's not old? This fucking take this DD Warrior Lady Banisher of the Radiance dot deck Macrocosmos.
Dude, the Thunder King was gold. That made me the most mad.
Thunder King is so bad against Monarchs. We had a couple of them tonight in our play session where people were just like, I think the guy sided it in. I can't really tell, but I'm like, why are you playing Thunder King against Monarchs? Like it doesn't do. I don't think it does anything. Like I actually don't think it. He tried to negate our Miracle Fusion at one point. And we were like, you can't do that.
Yeah, like you should have probably done that on the Armory Arm, but I think if you did, we're still.
Yeah, because you're still in a good spot. You're just like, okay, well, I'll just Miracle Fusion anyway, which is what the whole turn was just going to be Miracle Fusion. But
yeah,
I really love the innovations that have happened with Edison format in general. Just seeing like how far Frog Monarchs, for example, have come. I think it's the most changed deck, whereas something like Blackwings and Glabbeasts are the most unchanged decks. Lightsworn and Frogs have, from 2010 till now, they received like the craziest buff. So Lightsworn has become Christius Horn, a much superior deck. I think that deck would have won Edison's SJC if you took it back to that tournament.
Dude, if you take Christius Horn, if you take Frog Hero, if you take...
Yes, I think that it's an easy win. Like, you just win the entire tournament. Probably low difficulty, too.
Dude, Jeff Jones would have been sitting there in the finals against you, like...
Yeah.
Like, shuffling his hand, like, just putting it on the table, walking away.
Yeah, like, what is this deck, and why is Christie out in the field on turn 2? Yeah. Like, what is actually happening here? Why did he just go beckoning? Yeah, exactly. It would have been insane. So, yeah, there's a lot of stuff like that. But, yeah, I think Lightsworn buffed to Christius Horn and Frogs being literally just a deck with the main Frogs and then just 15 Monarch-S cards, like Dark Dust and Dastalos, Ryza, Caius, and then you have like a Jinzo sometimes. Light and Darkness Dragon was actually played back then.
Yeah.
That deck is terrible because it had one play per turn.
Yep.
And when that play got stopped, you literally passed and had to rely on Battle Fader to bail you out. And that's not a really good strategy. Yeah. One play per turn also is not very skillful. Like there's nothing skillful. Excuse me. There's nothing skillful about you getting Treeborn in a graveyard and just going like.
Whenever I talk about Frog players and how like Ronak is a little guilty of this because he'll talk about like how difficult frogs are to play, and like when Ronak plays a frog deck, he has some kind of nasty, disgusting brew that does a lot of things. I can understand it from him. But there are people that'll be like, yeah, frogs are one of the hardest decks to play. Look at all these lines of Substitute, but they always end on Duplot. It's like, okay, they bring out the Treeborn. Now, do I summon the Caius, the Ryza, or the second Caius? Like.
Yeah.
Like
nice decision tree.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like it's not hard to play. Like you put the Treeborn on the field, you take the Treeborn off the field, and then you remove your opponent's card. That's the deck. And and that's why Ronak also hates the junk synchron version of frogs, because he's like, it doesn't solve the normal summon issue, it doesn't solve pulling the rug, it doesn't solve skill drain. It's just the same deck, but you make a synchro instead of a Monarch.
That's literally correct. It's more cards to get pulling the rug, more cards to get deck devastated as well.
Yes, absolutely. And that's why he likes the Diva version better, because the Diva is a proactive play on turn 1. It doesn't need grave setup. It can synchro with the Monarchs for its level 2. It's you get access to Salvage and Moray of Greed to get a lot of additional lines and value out of your swap frog and stuff. That's why he likes that version, and then he plays all these other. This burn version that he played at the Rivet. Do you know how long he'd been testing that build?
No clue.
He made it Friday night.
What?
He made it Friday night because one of our other teammates who plays Burn, not exclusively but almost exclusively, was like, "What if you play Burn Frogs?" And he was like, "Yeah, I could probably whip something up." And he made it to like just to be like just to show it could be done. And then he was like, "Okay, well I got the list now. I guess I'll take it."
Yeah, that deck is actually absurd. Like the Turbo Rocket strategy is so good. But you know what's actually happening is that he just has such a wealth of knowledge on how frogs operate that he could take the same 10 cards. So that top line, if you look at his deck list, I love the way it's structured. The top 10 cards are the frogs, right? Mm-hmm. Then the 30 cards below it can just be anything.
Yeah, it's 3 Kaias, 2 Ryza, and then
just do what you want. 25 cards of what you want. Like just obviously there's some other staples in there, but like for the most part, you take that top line of 10 frogs. And then you could put your Unifrog and your Flip-Flop in if you want. You could do you're always going to do your 3 Kaias because that's just the best. And then even the Ryzas can actually be something else. Like I'm convinced that he could definitely come up. I'm sure his Fairy Frog deck that he almost topped Deck Devastators 3 with. Like I don't think that deck played Ryza at all. And he was very close to topping that event too without him getting deck devied for like literally 8 cards.
The card that he played instead of Ryza in that list was Arcana Force something. And it's a card. Would you summon it? It's a 2400, so it's just basically a Monarch. You flip a coin, call heads or tails. If heads, then I think it's like all battle damage you take is halved while the card's on the field, and then if tails, all battle damage your opponent takes is halved. So it really doesn't do bad. Like there's not that much of a negative effect.
And it's a fairy.
It's also a Karibo.
Oh, in the hand.
Yeah, I found this out playing against my teammate for an internal tournament where she was playing the deck, and I was playing my quick draw list. And I made Junk Archer and cleared her monster and attacked. And she discarded this on me, and I'm like, what?
Yeah, that's actually the worst part is I dust frogs needs.
The worst
so part you saw it and didn't realize it. Yeah,
and I was like when I typed the handout in the chat, I didn't even list it by name. I listed it as a card I haven't read and won't read, and not reading it almost. Oh,
yeah, that's actually really cool because it can't be deck devastated either because it's too high.
Yeah, it was very interesting list for sure, but that deck dev was nuts, and it took like 6 frogs and 2 fairies from him.
Yeah, it just took everything. It was the worst case scenario. I think he would 100% had another top under his belt if deck dev Solemn did not happen. And I think that he could still pull it out with that Frog Fairy deck for sure. But that's kind of what I'm saying is that he has a foundation that now it's easy to just do anything. Like he doesn't need to really test too much because in his head, he knows how the frog stuff works in general. Right? Like adding something to it is not that hard. Maybe tweaking the ratios. Like I'm sure if you asked him now, what would you change? He probably would have changes, especially if the deck was actually made on Friday.
Yeah.
You're probably like, okay, so this in actuality throughout the tournament was the worst card in my deck. I would definitely change this for X. But at the end of the day, that foundation of like 15 cards, like the 10 frogs, the 3 Kaias, and the 2 Ryza, like that is, there you go.
Yeah, he doesn't have to do anywhere near as much testing as most people do. Even with, dude, people sit here doing test runs for tournaments with decks they played for years, and it's like, come on, you don't know the deck yet? And then
I'm glad you said that. I do not do some extensive testing before like any real Edison tournament at this point because I've been playing Edison for a year, and if I'm going to play, especially Blackwings, like I don't need to test Blackwings. Like, are we fucking serious? That deck is super easy to play. It's super easy to pilot, and it validates a lot of other people's hands by just your hand being super ignorant. So I don't really need to test. What I usually do is I help my friends test, and I'm like, if you want some experience, tell me what you want me to play, and I will play it at like a top level, and you'll get to see like what it's like to go against zombies or hero beat or diva hero or glad beats. Like if you want me to be a bot, I can be a bot that's really hard to beat.
Yeah, you're Stockfish 10 of Yu-Gi-Oh.
Yeah.
I don't test for any tournaments that I enter really, unless I have like some crazy brew that I like just came up with out of nowhere. But like if it's Blackwings, any change I make to Blackwings at this point is theoretical for some meta I expect. Like putting Legacy of Yada in. Like I put Legacy of Yada in my Deck Dev 3 list, and I went 5-3 with it. I actually missed. I forgot I had Value in the Grave because I'm stupid, and the reason I forgot was because I got super tilted because I made a board that only loses to brain control, and he topped it. And so I was just tilted the rest of the game, and I forgot my value, and I would have had lethal. And so I threw that match, and then I lost to Carpath. And yeah, the reason I lost to Carpath is because of Battle Fader. I hate that card. I had lethal. And I didn't know what he was playing, and then he has a decree for my Mirror Force. I'm like, okay, guess I just lose. It's whatever. But
It'd be like that.
But yeah. A Pro Storm told me play Legacy Yada in Blackwings, and I was like, okay. So I tested it out for the tournament, and it was okay. It wasn't bad. It was just like I had some bad beats in one of the matches, or two of the matches, and then I threw another one, so I didn't top, which sucks. But I would have if I had beaten Carpath or not forgotten my value. But
yeah, that's not the worst thing ever. Like I thought about Legacy Yada because I saw people talking about it, and I didn't actually go as far as to try it out. I just thought about, okay, RBET Rules was won by Pro Storm playing a fairy deck that mained 2 Legacy Yadas to go to 42 cards. And when I play against fairies, because my best friend, he actually plays the fairy deck exclusively at locals. And it's actually it's my deck, but I give it to him every Thursday night, and he just plays it. And I pull it out of my bag, and I just toss it to him. Here you go, here's your deck. He gives it back to me at the end of the day. But he tops every single week, basically, with that deck. And so I'm very used to that matchup, which is why I'm not buying into the whole fairies destroys Blackwings, because we go very back and forth. I would say that is one of the closest 50-50 matchups ever, because we both have when people say fairies beats Blackwings, I always think you're not playing against an actual good Blackwing player then, because I don't think that those two decks beat each other, honestly. I think that is one of the closest 50-50s you will get in the entire Edison, especially when you consider games 2 and 3. The cards that come in for both of you guys, Deck Devastation Virus, if you're not trying to cope, is actually game 100%. It is just game. You just actually flat out fucking lose the game. And anything that you say other than that is you're really trying to cope, and I get that. People who love the fairy deck, I understand the deck is good. Do not get me wrong, but saying that it outright destroys Blackwings that's just a lie. Because Blackwings has too many power hands that it doesn't matter that you're playing. It doesn't matter what you're playing, honestly. And that's kind of my thing is you can't ever say that a deck outright just destroys Blackwings, period. This is a deck that if you want to beat Blackwings every time, just play this deck. I just do not buy into that.
I made a comment in one of my tier list videos. I was like, yeah, fairies are such a good matchup versus Blackwings. They're almost 100-0, and I realized afterwards when I played against my friend testing me, and I lost 3 matches in a row to him on Blackwings. Now, he sacked me. He had Dark Armed and Brain Control every single game. Or at least half of them.
But that happens.
Yeah, but
the Dark Arms are going to rain. The fucking Deck Devies are going to rain. Sometimes the Icarus to make your guys miss timing is going to happen. It is not some matchup that you're just going to sit down and be like, oh, you're playing this deck free. It's just not like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And now,
it's not Monarch Hero beat. Go ahead.
The reason Pro Storm says it's such a good matchup is, I think it is. I think it's probably 55-45 because you don't really care about recruiters in Shura. I think that's an overstated thing when it comes to Shura. Is yeah, I get the value for free, but you also now you get the DD Warrior Lady, you get the other recruiter if you want, you get the Dialk, it's whatever. But Pro Storm, he showed up late and got a game loss at Rivet Rulers because he woke up late. It was 1 a.m. for him because he was in Malaysia at the time.
Yeah, he was in a different country.
Yeah, and so he got a game loss, and in what would be game 2, his opponent opened Sirocco double Whirlwind on him, and he won through it. And I was absolutely insane. I don't know if it was because fairies were good against Blackwing or if it's because Pro Storm's insane. But
I would like to watch the replay because I'm sure that something went wrong. Has to, because that's such an outlier, right? To lose a game with Sirocco double Whirlwind. I always say though, I personally do not like double Whirlwind. It's completely unnecessary. The deck does not need that ever. I can win any game with just 1. Every time I've drawn 2, I'm always nervous because what ends up happening is I usually don't have a lot of defense in that hand. And when you draw 2 Whirlwinds, your opponent is going to play so outrageously aggressive because they don't have a choice. You back them into a corner, and they're going to do things that they normally would not do that actually might get you because you've made the game impossible to go long now. Once you put double Whirlwind out, I'm going to play like an ape. I will literally summon Gear Frame, Discard Fortress, Brain Control, take your shore, everybody attack, pass. Because that's the game that I have to play to have any fucking shot to win this game now. But yeah, I would really like to see the saying like, oh, I won through double whirlwind. Like, I've won through double whirlwind too. The part that I'm not telling you though is that I had heavy storm. Okay, I had heavy storm, and then I had whirlwind shore to follow it up. And you know, like it's like, okay, yeah, you won through double whirlwind, but your opponent, you know, they like you kind of countered their exact setup. Like it,
yeah.
Like any one game is like anecdotal at that point. It's like, yeah, I've won through somebody milling double wolf as well and summoning JD on turn 2, but like it doesn't.
Yeah.
Sure, like it doesn't mean anything.
There are times.
Go ahead.
Wait, what were you saying?
No, I was gonna say I also don't mind the concession of like 55-45.
Yeah.
But like when people say destroys, that's not 55-45.
Right.
That's destroys
like 80-20 if or more.
80-20 is like when you play Monarchs and you play against the hero deck, you just feel like, oh, okay, like this round is actually free. Like 0 difficulty. I'm probably going. I can set Dupe Frog and no TKU. Like that is actually just a real thing that might happen.
Over it, dude.
You can't do a single thing. I can set Dupe Frog, and that might actually be the end of the game for your entire deck. Like your whole deck just got invalidated by a fucking Dupe Frog. That's how bad that matchup is actually at 80-20. So like stuff like that, I agree with 100%. You can kind of see it. But when I see a good Blackwing player play against a good Fairy player, it's a very grindy match. And if somebody fucks up, they probably will lose because the decks can capitalize on each other's misplays really bad. Like both of them can capitalize really, really hard on misplays. And it's a lot to play around. You both have to play around so many things. Like, oh, you have the DD Whirlwind here. You have the Icarus attack here. You have the Herald of Orange Light here. Like, there's so much stuff going on that makes it like a really interesting match. But I don't think that like destroy like 80-20. Absolutely not. Like, you're just not playing against good Blackwing players because the truth of the matter is so many players are carried by the Blackwing deck. They're not actually good Yu-Gi-Oh players. They're just playing one of the best decks that has a lot of free wins. So it like I can beat a lot of Blackwing players with fairies as well. Like I can just stomp them because they're not very good. But if I play against fucking Troll McCabe and he's playing Blackwings, which I have done, I've played fairies against him. When I tell you he 2-0'd me so goddamn fast, like it just didn't even seem like it just seemed like what just happened? I thought this was gonna be one of my better matchups. He's just like game 1 was a whirlwind game, so I got invalidated. And then game 2, like I had a very regular start, like a Shining Angel. I had Christie in my hand, all this other stuff. And then he just goes, like, set Sirocco, set Deck Devi, and set something else, pass. And, like, the game's going back and forth. And the next thing you know, it's just like, yeah, I'm going to Deck Devi you now. And here's my hand. Yeah, I show my hand. Like, what am I supposed to do? I'm playing all the cards that the fairy decks play. Like, I didn't tech anything. I didn't change anything. I didn't try to do, like, some cute shit. It's like I'm playing all of the cards that every fairy deck plays ever. And I got caught my pants down. Like I have a Shining Angel, a Nova Summoner, an Honest, a D-Alk. Like I'm drawing fairies because the deck fairy decks play a lot of monsters, like 25 plus, right? Like they play a shit ton. Mm-hmm. And so like yeah. But yeah, like it's one of those things where against two good players, I feel like matchups in general are like a lot cleaner when you see like two really good players playing them as opposed to just watching like two DB randos. Absolutely. And you're like, oh wow.
And you know that's another thing. Like people put so much emphasis. Like I'll post a replay of me doing something stupid and funny to a DB random, and it'll be like that doesn't even mean I played good. That just means that I drew a good hand. Like, but it's like, you know, one of the things that bothers me about Edison format right now that doesn't bother me about GOAT, and I don't know which format I like better at the moment, but GOAT I think is more competitive because like the players who play it are so much more like battle hardened, if you will. Like they're just very competitive. They always want to constantly win and get better and do better. Yes. And like Edison players and GOAT players love to cope. So it's like, oh, my opponent open pot duo graceful T drag. But I could have won this game if I'd done this and this and this. It's like, but that's a good thing. It's a good thing that they're looking, even those games that they can't win, they're looking for ways they could have won. So that's a good thing. And I think the big problem with Edison at the moment, for me, is that people aren't really doing that. Like, do you know what the least active channel in the EdisonFormat.com server is, other than like the really unplayable decks?
You mean out of the ones that are mainly the competitive decks,
or like just the least common, like the least active channel overall? Not even decks. It's the replay analysis channel.
Oh, yo, I actually have a story about that just happened very recently. You probably were there for this, but it was me talking to Karina, however you say the name, about the loss to Trap Dragons, because I do not believe that Trap Dragons has a winning matchup against Frogs. I've played that matchup a couple times. and it does not feel to me like that deck is just pressuring me too hard. Like, you play Mash Dragon and fucking Bottomless Trap Holes. I do not believe your deck is... I would rather play that every time than Dragon Turbo, even though that doesn't prove the argument. But, like, I don't think there's anything scary that the Trap Dragon deck does, and I think that the deck is worse against Frogs because it's playing trap cards. I don't think the trap cards are the answer to, like, especially regular ass traps. I don't think they're the answer to Frogs.
If it's like ungodly, unfair traps like Mask of Restrict, that will...
Yes, that's very different. And we're talking about, like... Yeah, we're talking about, like, some of the... we're talking about, like, outlier stuff like that. It's like, okay, well, yeah, if you get floodgated, sure, Frog loses the floodgates. That's not a secret. But I was asking her, like, hey, how did you end up losing at Deck Devastators at all? Like, I just was curious. And this was not to, like, make a dig or judge her or anything like that. I was genuinely curious.
Karina does not like me, which is why I don't like her, so I make digs at her. But
okay, see, I saw you guys. I think you guys were arguing at one point.
Yeah,
and somebody said, I think she said, like, you were insufferable or something like that. And I was like, I said, I don't know if these two are best friends and they're just joking, but using the word insufferable to someone is like funny as shit, and also kind of like, damn, that's harsh. Like, insufferable is harsh, but not yeah. So I asked her, like, how did you lose? Like, what actually happened? And she was like, oh, I don't think I could have won at all. And I'm also not familiar with the matchup. So I was like, I'm curious. I would love to see the replay. And then she ends up not posting the replay, but I think Dimitri gets a hold of it.
Dimitri,
and he's a really good player.
Yeah, you could have won game 1 and 3 here, here, and here. And she was like, oh, okay.
Yes. And I love that, because I was like, even though, again, that's just like anecdotal evidence, I was so happy to know that I'm not crazy and thinking that the matchup isn't as bad as you think it is. I think that matchup is totally winnable. And I personally believe that at the very least, 60-40 at the very least in Frog's favor. Like, I think that Frogs beats specifically Trap Dragons, because I've played that matchup enough to get the feel of it. Like, every matchup has a feeling to it. The way I always say, like, the easiest one to describe is like Glabbies versus Frogs feels free, and then also Frogs versus Hero Beat feels free. Those matchups, you can feel that you're not doing much and it's doing so much to your opponent.
Right, yeah.
Like, set Dupe Frog, I'm not doing much, but why is that doing so much to your deck? That's kind of what I mean. And
they start doing stuff like setting their ocean, banishing both their monsters, just summon 0 to go.
Yeah, it's like that. Why is it so easy? But specifically, I think that, like, the Junk Hero Frog deck, when I was playing it, that build, when I was playing against Trap Dragons, I was like, this seems almost kind of unfair how I'm able to, like, the guy, I have a replay, and I think it might be a video that I've done, but the guy Future Fusioned turn 1 both games and lost both games. And the way and it wasn't like my hand was absolutely insane. It was just like, I'm going to pick away your cards slowly but surely. And I think I was on the Battle Fader build, so I was like, when you go for game, like, Battle Fader you and then just like reversal you. A Miracle Fusion at any point is really toxic against that deck, because it's like, if you don't have Prime Material out, and even if you have Prime Material out, all I need is, like, anything to attack over it, and then, like, I can crash into your guy. It's like all kinds of weird shit that goes on. But I think also the Dupe Block is hard for that deck to deal with. Like, randomly, I sat on Dupe Block for a couple turns, and he ended up summoning 5 God and a bunch of other guys, and I was like, you actually can't get over this Dupe Block, can you? Like, this is actually a problem.
There's another thing is, like, in that deck, Future Fusion without much backup is nowhere near as threatening as a Dragon Turbo Future. Like, a Dragon Turbo Future Fusion, you're like, once they show you the trade in, you just hit the mid-feed button. Like, it just feels that unfair for them to see it. But then, like, but Trap Dragons is like, okay, you get the 2 red meds, now I'll just Kaius you and do whatever. And, like, your red meds are sitting there for a turn not doing anything. It's like ample time for me to, like, mess with them. So definitely.
I love I was gonna say, I love any deck that is playing heavy traps if I'm playing Monarchs, because you can just slowly pick outside of Glabbies, but you can just slowly pick them away. And it feels really, really insane when your opponent's like set monster, set backer, and you go Ryza. Like, what? Like, you have Mash Dragon, I just Ryza'd your Mash Dragon. Like, congratulations. Then you bottomlessed it. Congratulations. Like, next turn, what are you going to do? Summon Mash Dragon, attack me for 14? Cool, bring back Treeborn Frog, do anything with it.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, enemy control really messes that deck up.
That's another one.
You summoned your 5-headed dragon? I win. Like,
yeah, you go end phase, summon 2 red eyes. Like, okay, Econ. You don't do that. You summon 1 at a time. Okay, Monarch them. Like, pick them off slowly.
Exactly. And, like,
I think that's what the guy tried to do.
They still lose 1.
Yeah, I think that's what the guy tried to do. Actually, game 1, I think he I think he went double. He went Future Fusion turn 1. He won the roll or won the rock paper scissors. Future Fusion turn 1. Summoned 2 red eyes, and then I dealt with it probably by crashing them or something like that, or making like I don't know some kind of monster turn 1. Like maybe I went Infernal Prodigy, Substitute, Tribute, Miracle Fusion, like deal with it that way, or I dealt with it in like just simply brain control, crash. You have your 1-off Future Fusion, I have 1-off brain control, crash your guys, you're mad. The next game, I think that he goes Future Fusion, and then because of game 1, recency bias, and just him playing like through the fallacies, he goes, I'm only going to summon 1 red eyes this time. And so my hand was just like able to slowly pick them off with monarchs. Like turn 1, just like, again, Infernal Prodigy, Tribute, summon Caius, banish it, pass. Like next turn, he summons another one on the end phase, and I'm like, all right, fuck it, Tribute again. So he's just like, it's so funny. I was like, this time if he would have summoned double, I would have been more pressure, but he only summoned 1 at a time, so it actually worked out. But yeah.
Yeah, people make mistakes like that. Like sometimes it is matchup dependent whether you summon 1 or 2, but like you can't just make the same play twice but do it differently because something didn't work out the first time. Like,
yes, if it's right, it's right. If it's wrong, it's exactly. There's none of this like, oh, it didn't work this time, so I'm gonna like people will deck devastate someone and not take away their whole hand, maybe even lose the game, and then assume that like I should not be playing deck devy anymore because it didn't outright win the game. Like I've heard about, like that's just not the way that works. Like there are always going to be. We're playing a card game. We're playing a game with variance. We're playing a game where anything can happen. In fact, I'm pretty sure I played in a tournament where I deck devastated someone and all they dropped was Treeborn Frog, and like that fucking sucks because if I saw your actual deck, I know that at the very least there are 10 frogs in it that can like be deck devastated. And then on top of that,
3 faders, like
which most people play the fader builds. So yeah, there's like plenty of stuff that can be deck devastated, but like in that particular game, you just didn't have a bunch of cards to be deck devastated, and that's fine. Like that's just going to happen, and you have to accept that. The same way where sometimes you sit down and your opponent goes Whirlwind Shore, you're like, well, fuck me, right? Like,
yeah,
like that doesn't mean that you played the wrong deck that day. Like you wouldn't say like, oh, Glad suck. You would have lost with whatever you were playing. It didn't matter what you were playing if your opponent was going to go Whirlwind Shore. Like it doesn't matter.
Oh yeah, I was going to say, speaking of double Whirlwind earlier, I was going to say sometimes I just like, unless I'm going straight up just first and like there's no interruption. Like, but if I'm going second or something, I'll sometimes just hold the second Whirlwind because like I don't want them to like pick it off with Raikou. I don't want to have Storm. Like I want them to deal with it and then be like, okay, the Whirlwind's gone. It's fine.
That's how I feel. Like I said, I think you only need 1 to win. I've won too many games and seen too many games end off of just 1 Whirlwind to know that 2 is never necessary.
Yeah.
Like it's overkill if I've ever seen overkill, and it makes your opponent like 1 Whirlwind. Your opponent might try to play through it. Like people are like, okay, maybe I can set my Raikou and like do something. Mm-hmm. Once you do the second one, you're saying like, come at me, bro. Like you're saying, come at me, bro. Literally, you're giving them a fucking loaded gun and saying, come at me. Like they're going to play so crazy. At least they should. If they're intelligent, they're going to be like, okay, so all of this like setting monsters and trying to play the slow grindy game, it's not going to work. I need to just do damage. I need to do damage and say, I'm just going to top deck brain control, or like I'll have dark, something like that. Like, I just have to do something super crazy and just put you on better habit because I don't have a chance to win anyway. And that comes to like maybe one of the final points I want to talk about before we like end this, is that a lot of people in Edison Format in particular have this mindset of instead of playing to win, they play to not lose, and I hate it. Yeah. Oh. Like you have to just know, like for example, people lose a lot of times and they have like D prisons and stuff in their hand, right? And it's like I don't think you realize that. Sure, like Heavy Storm, if he has that, you lose. But if he doesn't have it, it gives you the highest chance of having to win the game. Mm-hmm. And like you're playing to not lose to Heavy Storm, but you should be playing to win. And the only chance you have to win is to just like set it all and say you don't have it. Yeah. Like if you have it, you're going to win anyway. I think that's like a thing that so many people just don't seem to realize when the game gets to a point where you lose to Heavy, but you're going to lose the game anyway. Absolutely. If you just don't set your goddamn back rows. Like I always tell Stenga when we're playing, we'll be in a really bad spot. Our opponent will be in a really good spot. We'll be in a really bad spot, and he'll have like a deep prison or a mirror force or something. And I'm like, I know that you already have like 2 back rows, but is that the point now? Yeah, I was like, is that the point now where you're not going to win the game because you held mirror force in your hand?
Exactly.
That's not going to be the reason that you won this game. Holding that bottomless or that deep prison or whatever the fuck you have, that will not be the reason that you're like, oh, thank God I held that Mirror Force in my hand. What would I have done if I hadn't did that? That will never be the reason why you won.
I started rereading Road of a King recently, and I was coming across the player skill level section, analyzing your opponent and how good they are, and he was talking about the average player just has no understanding of beatdown versus control, and not understanding that what we're talking about now is just a simple part of that. If you know that your opponent is threatening Heavy Storm for game, and that if you don't give them the chance of Heavy Storm, that they play through your backroads anyway, they are the control. They have the inevitability of winning the game, and you have to just consciously go, I'm okay with losing to Heavy Storm. I'm not okay with losing to every other card.
Yep. And some games are the same way. We're using Heavy Storm as an example, but it's the same thing with Brain Control or Dark Arm and stuff like that. It's
so hard to play around Brain Control, but it's sometimes if they have Brain Kais, they have Brain Kais. I want to make a board that wins against 39 cards, even if it loses a Brain Control. Unless I have a hard read on Brain Control. They haven't played a card in their hand for the past 7 turns because I haven't had a face-up monster. That's a situation where it's if once I have a read on Brain Control, it's okay, I won't give you a way to win with Brain Control. But if it's a matter of me picking a 3-of to lose to or a 1-of, in a blind game state, I'm just gonna I'm going to give it to you. If you have it, you have it.
Yep, I totally agree. So that's one of the main things is just knowing when you're going to lose the game anyway, and just not playing to lose, but playing to win instead. I'm giving myself the best chance to win. In fact, if you're listening to this, there is an episode of Mastering the Pupil where we're playing Glad Beast. So look, there's only a couple Glad Beast videos because I usually rage. But one of the episodes of Mastering the Pupil, I'm playing Glad Beast, and we get to a point where we do set it all. And this is when I gave Stengo the lesson that holding a shrink or whatever the hell in your hand is not going to be, we're not going to be oh, thank God. I held shrink in my hand. No, set all of it. And if he goes Heavy Storm, give him the handshake.
Right. And it's the same way with when people won't turn a monster to attack because of Mirror Force. There's a video on my channel, my quick draw video. I have Gores and Vanity's Fiend, and he has Mirror Force set, and I'm I can't remember how many life points he had. I think he had 20. I think he had 2600. So the Vanity's Fiend direct wasn't enough. But if I turn the Vanity's Fiend to defense and he does have Mirror Force, I lose to every single every single monster top deck because I have 1200 defense. If it's Deep Prison, I lose to Deep Prison plus the monster top deck. So I just left them both in attack. I got Mirror Force. I scooped. I didn't actually. I think I actually won through that game. But I was if he has Mirror Force, he's just better than us. And I somehow miraculously, I did win. I somehow miraculously won. But I was there's no way I can play around Mirror Force here and not expect bad things to happen if it is anyway.
Yes. And I learned from Steve Silverman because he is the most outrageous Yu-Gi-Oh player I know. When it comes to putting your opponent on you better have it, that man doesn't believe you ever. He never believes that you have the Gores. He never believes that you have the Mirror Force or the Torrential. Those are the 3 cards that everyone in Edison, that everyone plays around those cards to their own detriment. Yes. So it's kind of funny. I was playing at locals a long time ago. This is last year, early in the year, and I was playing against one of my friends. We're friends now, but I didn't know him at the time, so I had just met him. He's playing Hero Beat. And I don't even remember what I was playing, but the point is, he had game on board. He had Stratos, Alias, and an Absolute Zero. Okay? And it's just blatantly game on board. I haven't done anything for so many turns, but for whatever reason, he decides to put Zero in defense, and he put Alias in defense, and he attacked me with Stratos. and Silverman is watching this game, Silverman, McCabe, everybody, and they just, walk away. And
the crazy thing is, even if they gores you, the Absolute Zero deals with it, who cares?
Yes. And so after I end up winning this game, I end up outrageously winning this game in the most ridiculous way. I just crawl back into it because of him just not doing what he should be doing. And when I leave the local and get my pack or whatever, someone's like, you were cooked. I was like, oh, you don't have to tell me. I was like, you don't have to, trust me, it's not lost on me that I lost that game 100 out of 100 times.
Exactly. I know when I lose, but I'm not going to, I'm not just going to extend the handshake because my opponent has game on board. Go into the battle phase and give it to me.
Yes, there are like most of the games, in fact, and this is one of the things that's so frustrating about Yu-Gi-Oh! And it gives me a lot of anxiety. But most of the games that I play, I see that my opponent could beat me.
Right. Yeah.
Like if you look at the way the game played out, you're like for example, we just played a game where our opponent had Mirror Force, and like that would have been really fucking good right there. We put all of our eggs in one basket.
Yep.
We were like absolute zero, equip armor on attack, and like he happened to have one of the only cards that actually deals with that perfectly. Even though we MST'd and it was a skill drain, it was like, oh fuck. It's like, yeah, you actually had one of the only cards that you could have, but like, it's not lost on me that my opponent could have played better and won the game, and I see that so often. It's like, yeah, he could have played better, but that's what separates us as humans. Like, he did not play better.
Like, and I always tell people, like, at the upper level, when both players are playing perfectly, yes, the game's just luck. Like literally.
It really does come down to a lot more luck than people realize and are willing to accept. And I'm not delusional about that in Yu-Gi-Oh! Like, if two people are really good and they're both just playing Yu-Gi-Oh!, it comes down to who drew better a lot more than you think.
It's either
because they're not making misplays. Yes, and stuff like that. And if it's a mirror match, so a good example of this that I can recall is I played Billy Break when he won his first YCS, the last round of Swiss. So Toronto 2011, we both topped this event. We're both playing Tengu Plants. He wins the die roll. He opens up Dust Shoot. His turn one is summon Tengu, set Dust Shoot, go. He sees my hand. He Dust Shoots. He puts back my Maxi. And then next turn, he goes Lone Fire Reborn, kill you. Okay? There was nothing about that he did that I would not have done to him if I had won the die roll, opened up the exact same way, and killed my opponent. It was literally rudimentary what he did to me. Mm-hmm. And I was like, wow, Billy, that's how we're starting today? And then game 2, we like played, I think I ended up winning, and then game 3 was like him going first and him doing something else ridiculous like that, where it was like basically out of my control. Like it wasn't anything that I could have done better to win the game. It's like, yeah, you drew really, really well, but you also are really good at the game and you know exactly what you're doing. So it kind of like you winning the roll matters, and then you having the tango on the field before I can get my tango out, and you saw the morning mine, stuff like that. Like you just win a die roll in a situation means that you won the entire round. Sometimes rounds come down to literally I won the roll, and that's the only reason I actually won that round. Mm-hmm. But yeah, this was fantastic. If you have anything else, I'm gonna wrap because I need to get some dinner in me. But
yeah, I think I'm done for now. I don't have like too much else I could say.
Okay, if it's even just like one more thing on your list or whatever, then I'm totally fine answering it. But if not, then this was actually a great pleasure, and I actually wouldn't mind having you come on my podcast, like formally as a guest on the podcast, and just doing just a discussion about Yu-Gi-Oh! Because you're pretty knowledgeable about not just Edison Format, but like Yu-Gi-Oh! In general, and just how the theories and stuff that go into making a good player and why certain things are correct versus not correct. I like that type of conversation. So
appreciate that. I'm very thankful that you came on. I love having incredible players on my channel because
appreciate the compliment.
It just I think it makes everyone better at a game. I want everyone to be better at a game.
Same.
That's why I'm so harsh in the Discords. People say I'm really rude. People say I'm really mean. I want you to be good. Stop playing bad.
I'm the same way. Honestly, I'm not the same way yet in like Discord and stuff like that. But if you are around me in person, or if you know me, like if you know anyone who knows me, they know that I am very, very shrewd. Like I am. If you ask Stango or anyone like that, especially him because he's my pupil, I'm very hard on him. Like I've had to edit things out of our videos because the things that I've said, people would feel like I'm going too hard. They would be like, "Oh shit, like that was actually crazy." But I am very, very hard. But then what'll happen is he's gotten so much better at the PS5 tournament. Like he ended up having a better record than me. At one point, he was 4-1, and I was X2 already because I lost to the winner in round 1, who opened up Whirlwind Shore game 3, and I was like, okay, well, that's like, what am I going to do? But like, it got to a point where he was 4-1, and I was X2, and I kept thinking to myself, that's insane. You are terrible at this game. Like, at one point, you were so bad at this game that, I don't know, like, he didn't know the most basic things, right? Like, he was an infant. He started playing Yu-Gi-Oh! At the beginning of the pandemic. And so he's been playing it for 3 years at this point. And just seeing where he's come to where he is right now, like, sure, there's still a lot that he can work on. There's still a lot of fundamentals and things like that. But just the fact that, like, from being one of the worst players ever, because you're just new, and there's no fault of your own, you're just new, to being literally someone who has a 4-1 record playing zombies and like at a tournament with really a lot of YCS champions and stuff like that. Like it just, I was told him, I was like, I'm actually really proud of you. Like no matter what happens, and like sure he didn't top, but he still ended with a winning record overall. I finished 5-2, and he ended up 4-3 because he's like, I ended up getting fatigued. I did misplay 100%. Like I could have won that game, and I threw. And I was like, listen, it happens. This was your first major tournament. Like you've never played in a tournament in person like this. He doesn't even know how to shuffle cards correctly. It's so funny. Like when he shuffles, he does like his fingers don't know how to shuffle a deck of cards. He's just never really done it. But yeah, I want people to get better too. So that's like what your point was. And I agree wholeheartedly. And I'm kind of mean about that because I don't have it in me to not be competitive. Like
same.
I don't just play for just fun. For me, winning is fun. So like
thank you.
All of that, oh, it's just a game and it's a children's card game, stuff like that. Bullshit. You spend hundreds of hours on this fucking game and probably actual cash money. A lot of people who play, you spend hours of time playing this game and actual money playing this game. I don't want to hear that you're just playing for fun. That is bullshit. Okay, because anything that you give that much time of your life to, I feel like is not just for fun. That's like you making a cop out for not doing the way, like not putting the work in and then not getting the results that you really, really do want. But like, it's easy to say, oh, I don't really care about it that much anyway. You know, it's just like, oh, it's just like, this is just a game. It's not that serious. Like, okay, sure. Use that to cope as your defense mechanism, but that's really like cowardice, in my opinion. Like, if you put, yeah.
I always ask people, are you going to look at Magnus Carlsen and tell him chess is just a game? Like,
yeah, it's just one of the, I don't like cop outs like that, and I don't like when people are just filthy casuals. Honestly, like I'm not here for the filthy casual stuff. So there's a difference.
Casual and a filthy casual. A casual is someone who knows they're a casual, doesn't play in tournaments, doesn't try and do crazy, and just accepts it. A filthy casual plays in tournaments and thinks they're a competitive player.
Yes, or I'll even say a casual is somebody like you might play in tournaments, but you'll play like your fun deck that you know you don't expect to actually do well, but you're like, I love playing my Volcanic Gravekeeper deck that I made 13 years ago. Every once in a while, you'll get a win. You'll flip up your spy, you'll get Descendant, you'll summon Flamvel, dude, and you'll be like, I love this deck so much. I won a couple games with it back 13 years ago, and that's fine. You don't expect to actually like beat McCabe and stuff like that. You're like, this is the deck I want to play. I'm a casual. But like you said, yeah, filthy casuals are the ones who think that they're hot shit. They might even top one tournament and be like, oh, now it's time to start my YouTube journey. It's like, okay. Like,
exactly. Edison has so much of this. I was going to say, Edison suffers from its size. It's too big for people to think the tournaments mean nothing, but it's too small for them actually to. And so you get people who get these one tops and they think they're hot shit, and they just
it which is why I tell people like, do not be results oriented. Do not just look at something and be like, oh, it topped, therefore it's good, or he topped, therefore he's good, because that's also a common misconception. It's like that's not how that works.
Yeah, exactly.
But,
I have 4 tops in this in this format. I don't think I'm good at it. I don't think I'm good at Yu-Gi-Oh in general. Like I think I'm an above average player, but above average isn't good to me. So like,
well, you're harsh on yourself. I definitely think that you're a good player for sure. But like I know that we can be our own worst critics. That's just the thing that like every Yu-Gi-Oh player suffers with. Even the best of the best, you know, they might pretend, but like a lot of them, you know, are always critiquing themselves and really hard on themselves. I tell people all the time, my losses keep me up at night.
Thank you. Like I thought about. I didn't even look at my replay against Murray, and it still played in my head about my loss all day long. Like I didn't look at the replay, but I know everything in it, and I know exactly what I should have done better, and it kept me up.
Yep. It will keep me up at night. Literally, my misplays keep me up at night. I kind of want that on a t-shirt. My misplays keep me up at night. But all right, this was a pleasure, as I said, and we will definitely collab again and reconnect again. I think I just made a new friend in Edison Format, and I'm really happy about that. But yeah, this has been really cool, Cam.
I appreciate you coming on. You later. I just want to say, I'm still taking questions for the Q&A video I want to make. Anyone leave me comments or DM me on Discord, ask me those questions. Thank you, Frazier, for coming on. You have been an excellent guest.
Yep, and check out the I'm There podcast.
Yep, check that out. I'll put that link in the description.
Thank you. You could just give our link tree. I don't know. I'll send you our link tree on Discord, so you can just put it wherever this is posted. And I'm going to chop up our dueling videos and then edit those and then do the 2 masters thing.
All right.
So those will be coming out like slowly but surely over time. But yeah, have a good night, and I will talk to you later.
All right. Peace out, guys.
See ya.